let's go back to a more general level. Could you tell me what makes it so special to operate a business in an emerging market? Where is the difference to running a business compared to running a business in Europe or in the US?
I could start from the point of definition with which we started this conversation. We have said that emerging markets are located somehow in between developing economies and advanced economies. That means that also according to macroeconomic parameters, these countries are somehow specific and located in between in terms of GDP per capita, in terms of let's say competition level, in terms of industrialization processes, and in terms of business environment.
Also institutions?
Absolutely. One of the most important differences between advanced economies and emerging markets are the so-called institutional voids, which are of course related to functioning of institutions.
You also mentioned business environment. Could you give me an example of a specific business environment, and also maybe explain to us what does business environment mean to you? What does it encompass?
According to market or marketing environment, external environment, there is internal environment which we are not addressing at this point. An external environment consists of microenvironment, which is direct environment of the company, on which the company can effect certain impacts. This microenvironment consists of suppliers, consumers, competitors, and stakeholders. And there is indirect environment, or the so-called macro environment, consisting of PEST, so PEST, political, economic, social, and technological factors on which the company has no influence. And of course, in terms of PEST, in terms of political environment, these countries are the emerging economies, emerging countries, markets depend much more on politics. One definition of Ian Bremner addresses this issue, saying that emerging markets are countries where politics matters as least as much as economics. And of course, the other one are the so-called institutional voids, meaning that in various fields there is whether no existing legislation and regulation, or it is existing but lacking, or there are problems with law enforcement, etc., etc.
Getting even deeper into the issue of institutional voids. In business environments, in emerging markets, we see that companies are faced with a problem. They face corruption, they face crime. Do you have a specific example of how companies can deal with these issues in emerging markets?
Yes, some of the largest emerging markets, like the BRIC countries, China, India, Russia, for example, are ranking also very high on the so-called corruption index list. It means that the corruption is several times in combination with crime is a very important issue. And we can see from several cases, like for example Cadbury India, which is a subsidiary of Mondelez International, which is a US sweet and chocolate and confectionery producer. There are involved into a process that they have created a fictitious factory in order to avoid paying taxes. Or there are other companies like Walmart, for example, the retail chain in India, also alleged under corruption processes. Basically, the problem could be avoided. It is paradoxically that if we take India as an example here, for foreign companies it is even easier to avoid corruption than for domestic companies, because employees in foreign companies can explain to potential partners that they have a zero tolerance for corruption in the company, and that they get fired if they would bribe anybody. So this is a standing that anybody could understand. The problem is linked with corruption is double. The first problem is that staffing or jobs in procurement, administration, controlling functions is not so lucrative in companies, generally speaking. So these positions, these jobs are staffed with mediocre, not highly motivated people, and of course they are more vulnerable to corruption. So one strategy how to deal with corruption would be that in this critical, for at least from the point of view of corruption, critical positions, you hire people who would work long-term with your company and who are motivated and relatively well paid. The other problem is issued with the corporate culture. So you should absolutely introduce, also in your subsidiaries, if you operate in those markets, the so-called zero tolerance culture. And you should deal transparently and openly. So meaning that, for example, if a senior executive is assumed to be corrupt, is he or she going to be fired or not? This is a very important lesson. So culture and of course staffing helps quite a lot in avoiding this issue.
Thank you very much for the interview. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
You're welcome. Thank you.